Will Isaac Wilson be ready if he gets thrust into action this fall? And how is the Utah defensive backfield looking? That's what we're going to be discussing on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are available wherever you get your podcasts. If you are in the market for a second listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Football or Locked On Big 12 as we gear up for the season, which gets underway this Saturday, thankfully. If this is your first time listening to the show, make sure you like and subscribe. You can follow us on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And we are brought to you today by our great friends at GameTime. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by GameTime. You can download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase today. Terms do apply. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined today by Utah beat writer Michelle Bodkin. And Michelle, as we get ready for this Utah season, one of the lingering things that comes with being led by Cam Rising is his health. He's going to be good to go. We're going to see him in the first game. Like, that's not what we're worried about. But every year he's been at Utah, right? There's been an injury at one point or another that usually takes him out of some action. So the backup quarterback spot is very important. And obviously, we're knocking on wood. Hopefully, Isaac Wilson only comes in garbage time this season. But there's a chance that he might have to come in, start a game even. I go back to how crucial it was when Bryson Barnes versus Washington State in 22 came in and won that game. So the question is, will Isaac Wilson be ready, and can Utah win with Isaac Wilson? And I do believe, because of his talent and the roster and coaching around him, I believe that answer is an emphatic yes.
Yeah, I think Isaac is just a guy that kind of has whatever that is, to quote Whit. I think that became very apparent in the spring game. That's really the only thing that myself, other media fans have to go on at the moment. The coaches have a whole hell of a lot more film and whatnot to dissect on him and the other QBs. And I think, it just was abundantly clear that he's ready for the moment. No moment's too big for him. And that's not to say that he won't go in and make mistakes if he's called upon in that way. He's a freshman and he's going to make mistakes and he's going to have to learn some things. But I think part of what tipped him over the edge, maybe compared to some of the others, is that when he makes mistakes, he learns from them quickly and he's not repeating them over and over and over again. So, and you pair that with, he has a good arm, he has good mobility. Those are things that Utah and Andy Ludwig have kind of been loving as of late. Those are things that Cam does quite well as well. So you're not having to change the game plan. And I think the other comforting thing too is he has a lot of veteran targets to go to, right? Mm-hmm. You have a guy like Brant Keithy that you can lean on. You can lean on Mekhi Bernard. Dorian Singer hasn't been in the program forever, but he's been there, done that. So I mean, he's not new to playing football at that level. So, and that's just three guys. Like that doesn't even get into the guys on the line and some of the other weapons that are scattered across the offense. So it's, I feel like it's a combination of he's good and he's ready to go. I think, again, he just seems to have proven that he can handle that moment. And then on top of that, you have a lot of guys that he can kind of lean on in that situation, if that situation does arise.
I agree completely because of love what you mentioned about the veteran supporting cast. And look, he beat out some other guys too, of like, hey, Sam Hewitt has experience. Brandon Rose has experience in this program, not in game experience, of course. But I feel confident in Isaac Wilson because the coaches trust him. And I think this is also the thing, right? People last year, when you talk about the backup quarterback thing, obviously with the season didn't go Utah's way. But the truth is, Utah beat everyone they were supposed to beat, and they lost to the teams when you have a backup quarterback and you're facing NFL quarterbacks, you're going to lose to. Utah last year lost to Bo Nix and Michael Penix, both of whom were top 15 picks in the NFL draft. The only one they didn't lose to that didn't have a great QB, because I know Fafita, I think he's going to have a monster season coming up here. I think he's incredibly talented. And that Arizona team obviously ended up being highly ranked because of just the way he came on late in the season. The only place Utah didn't win last season in the regular season, I'm not talking about the bowl game, but I'm talking about in the regular season, was Oregon State, where no one had won outside of Washington in like years until the Huskies had came up there last fall too. So this Utah team performed very well with backup quarterbacks. They've won in the past. Isaac Wilson does not need to put this team on his back when he comes in. He needs to be part of the reason they have success, and not even one of the main reasons. And to me, he's absolutely capable of doing that. And to me, like, there's really 3 games on the schedule that I look at like, okay, the Oklahoma State game this year, the Arizona game this year, and the game at UCF, that I'm like, those will be, and I think the Colorado one as well is one where it's like, okay, Utah's a better team than Colorado, but that Shedeur Sanders with the quarterback talent that he is versus Isaac Wilson, that's another one that could be tough. But outside of that, like Utah should still beat the likes of BYU, Houston, Arizona State. Like, there's so many of these games I look at and I'm like, okay, if Isaac Wilson is in, I still feel confident that Utah is going to do that. And that's a testament to this roster as a whole.
Totally. I mean, I completely agree with you. I think BYU could maybe be a little bit hairy, just from the standpoint of there's, some history there. And,
rivalries. Yep. Absolutely.
And the family dynamic. And so just the pressure of, trying to, if you're put in that position as a young guy, I could see you maybe trying too hard, or he could be ready for the moment. But that's the same thing with, say, Oklahoma State too. I mean, we sit here and go, oh, I think already, giving someone like that a little bit of leeway. Oh, well, he's a young guy. He hasn't played at this level. It might be a little bit tough for him. But, maybe he would surprise us. And he's ready for the moment. We've seen a lot of freshman quarterbacks, not necessarily Utah per se, but just, you sit and watch a college football season. How many times has a freshman come in for whatever reason, and kind of surprised everybody? So it does happen. I think it's always good to go in with the expectation that mistakes will be made. It might not be the prettiest game ever. You might want to bench him because that's just what fans do. The next guy on the bench is always better than the one on the field, right? But there's also the possibility that we all walk away completely surprised, or maybe not even completely surprised, but just optimistically surprised. I don't know what I'm saying here, but you know what I mean? Like that it's a pleasant surprise. There we go. That's what I was trying to say. We're pleasantly surprised. And I think he has that capability. It's just, I always hesitate to put that pressure on someone.
When you're talking about Wilson and not being like surprised if Utah wins at some of those games, I absolutely agree. I mean, Utah should, if Isaac Wilson starts and Utah goes to Stillwater, Utah should not win that game. That's a veteran Oklahoma State team, and you need a great quarterback to more than like just should win that game. But Utah's roster is so good that I do think, hey, contain Ollie Gordon, Alan Bowman makes a mistake, like Isaac Wilson does just enough, because there isn't a game on Utah's schedule where it's like, okay, Cam Rising has to be amazing or else Utah's going to lose. Like the USC game a couple of years ago, the regular season one, that's what that game became, is Cam Rising and Dalton Kincaid had to put on their Superman capes or else Utah was going to falter in that matchup to the Trojans. That game doesn't really exist to me right now, where it's play at that level or go home. And that's why I think we feel good about, if Isaac Wilson comes in, Utah should still be able to keep their momentum going too. No, they're not going to be as good as if Cam Rising was in there, because Cam Rising is one of the best quarterbacks returning to college football. Isaac Wilson in many ways is an unknown, but an unknown that has already won the backup job. And we've seen Utah do well with backups in the past. So I think we feel pretty confident if Isaac Wilson has to come in, and it'll be interesting to see how he looks. I mean, hey, Michelle, we're getting to get our first look at him in a little over a week here against Southern Utah. He's going to get in the game, and I'm excited to see what the Isaac Wilson era looks like in that early matchup, because it will be a preview of what I believe will come in 2025. But before we get to 2025, I want to talk about this Utah defensive backfield, because yes, There's no Cole Bishop. Sione Vaki is obviously gone. Even JT Broughton transferred to TCU, but Zemaiah Vaughn's still here. And there are some other electric playmakers that I'm really excited to see take the field this fall. Want to dive into the defensive backs in one moment. But first, have to talk with you all about our great friends at GameTime. GameTime has a new feature called Game Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I'm looking at going to some college football games this fall because I am fired up to have the sport I love back so much. And the ticket site that I'm going to be trusting is GameTime, because with GameTime, they just make it simple and easy. When you're talking about GameTime, you're talking about a site that allows you to get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Also, how about that low price guarantee where GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference? And we haven't even mentioned the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, because GameTime has you covered when you make your purchase. With GameTime, too, you can take the guesswork out of buying concert or game tickets with GameTime. You can download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, capital L, capital O, and C, all at the start of the word locked on and college, each of those capitalized, and all no spaces as well, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. You can download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Also want to talk to you about our great friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel lately, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then when YouTube TV, your base plan begins, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel it anytime. So you can head over to FanDuel today and obviously bet on all the great college football action, the Heisman, regular season matchups. There's so much there, but you can also turn your attention to some NFL action too and get rewarded by getting that Sunday Ticket opportunity. You can bet on any games and get this opportunity from NFL Sunday Ticket, but to make sure you guys can get in on it today, you can just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, capital L and O of on, all one word, once again, locked on, to download America's #1 sportsbook and not just start getting in on the action, but getting in on the Sunday Ticket action as well. Head over to FanDuel today. All right, time to talk about the Utah defensive backfield. It was a unit that caught some flack at times last year. I mean, Utah had a top 5 run defense, and the pass defense did not perform up to that level. But I do think it's important to remember, Michelle, and everyone so often forgets, this is a Utah defense last year that held 7 of their opponents under 15 points and only 4 times gave up more than 30 points. Those only 4 times they gave up over 30 points were to guys we've discussed: Caleb Williams, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Noah Fifita. The first 3 of those guys have all been involved with the Heisman, and Fifita has a great opportunity this year too. So I do think this is a defensive backfield that actually played better than it got credit for often, because this Utah defense was simply fantastic. And one of the reasons this defense was fantastic last year is Zemaiah Vaughn, and he's back. In his last 2 years, his 15 pass breakups lead the team. He's led the team in pass breakups in back-to-back years. Played in 44 games overall during his time at Utah, 24 starts, all Pac-12 honorable mention from a year ago. He's the best cornerback on this team, and I'm excited to see him get to match up with some of the top receivers in the Big 12, like a Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's only gotten better since we've last seen him. And I think it's really important to point out and remind everyone that Vaughn could have gone to the NFL this past year. Like, there was legit interest in him. I was having my NFL scout friends hitting me up. Hey, what do you think about this guy? Is he going to go? We really like him. You know, blah, 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 on and on. And he ultimately decided to stay another year in school, which was huge. And I don't, to be honest, with as much play as it sounded like he was getting, at least from the people that I know in the NFL, I was a little surprised that he came back. But he kind of came out and he said, you know what, I had some things that I felt like I still needed to work on, and I wanted to come back and I wanted to, you know, do this thing with my former teammates and get a little bit better. And having talked with Coach Shaw just the other week, it sounds like, you know, he did exactly that. He worked on some of the little things that Shaw pointed out to him that, you know, he needs to get better at, and he's done those things throughout fall camp. And so, yes, it sounds like, you know, he's going to be every bit as good as we remember him being, but he's probably going to be better, which is, I mean, who doesn't love hearing that about, you know, their star cornerback and kind of one of the anchors in that backfield that is overall going to be kind of new faces.
Yeah, he's going to be a leader for sure for this group. I think he has a chance to be one of, if not the best corners in not just the Big 12, but in all of college football because of his returning experience, especially improving on some of those things. Just hard to find guys with his length as well. It's what's nice about his ability to knock passes away. His wingspan is just gives him an advantage over a lot of those other cornerbacks I feel like you see on the outside.
And I was going to say something else that I think makes him a little bit unique and probably why he's so deadly. He did play quarterback. He's not originally a cornerback. He was a quarterback, and Utah gave him his one shot, which is why he's stuck around. He came out and said that not too long ago, and so he's had to learn this position. But I think he sees it through the eyes of the signal caller, which I think is fascinating. And I think, again, it maybe explains a little bit why he reads things so well and can see what's coming.
No, that's a great point too. And it's not the last time we're going to talk about someone in the secondary changing offensive positions to defensive one. I'm sure a lot of you know who we're teasing. But before we get to him, first we'll talk about the other guys in the cornerback room, the other starters, right? Zemaiah Vaughn's cornerback one, the other outside cornerback to me, because you got to have three guys all times in playing cornerback basically, because that's just, you're going to have three wide receivers on the field at all times pretty much. You'll have Keenan Johnson out there, the Georgia Tech transfer, 45 games played with 8 starts last year. 4 passes defended and an interception too. This seems like a nice, reliable presence too. And I think is a guy that I really trust that Sharif Shaw as well brought him in with a plan. And it's something he's talked about too. So I think he's going to be a nice addition for this team on the outside. I think he'll do a good job holding it down. And the guy that I'm really excited to see more of is Smith Snowden. It was a huge get for Utah, a 4-star commit. We saw him in the Las Vegas Bowl. He looked fantastic. He's going to be the nickel guy. And I think he is going to excel too. So if your 3 corners are Zemaiah Vaughn, Keenan Johnson, and Smith Snowden, like Utah's are, I think that's a really strong group of defensive backs.
Yeah. So, I mean, with Keenan Johnson, the comment's been his closing speed, right? He just has a lot of speed. He plays with a lot of speed. And I believe, if I remember correctly, Shaw's comments after spring was that he's had a lot of great cornerbacks in the room, but he's never had someone with the speed that Kenan Johnson.
Oh, my bad.
Yes. Yes, that's kind of a Micah situation.
Yes.
I'll get it right though. We'll get it right. Kenan, yes. Kenan just plays with a lot of speed that Shaw says he's never had in his room before. So I think that's going to be really fun to see. And then of course, yes, you have Smith Snowden, local kid, comes from the BYU side of things, decides that he wants to go to Utah. That was a huge get for Utah the last, not this past recruiting cycle, but the cycle before. And as you mentioned, he had some opportunities to kind of show what he has. He's made the transition to nickel, which is not an easy transition, but he also gives the Utes some flexibility in the cornerback room as well, because he also can be called upon to play outside corner as well. And then you start getting into guys that are kind of backing them up. Scooby Davis has made some significant strides according to the coaches. You have CJ Blocker that was supposed to be playing nickel. He's now been relieved of that duty. It sounds like he's more focused in on the outside, and that's just a much more natural fit for him. So it's highly possible that we see him. And then you have Kamari, I'm pretty sure I said that right, Kamari Shemwell, freshman. He came in and showed that he has an aptitude for playing nickel. So between all those guys, I think this cornerback room has kind of come together. And it will be interesting to see, who kind of rises to the top and stays there, or what different kinds of, mixtures of people that can be thrown out there. And we didn't even get into safeties that potentially could also be called to the cornerback. I mean, there's just so many different things that I think Utah can do with this defensive backfield because they have so many guys that have experience playing other positions. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about those safeties in one moment too. You did a great job naming the rest of the cornerbacks. The only other guy I'm interested to see it all if we see this fall is Cameron Calhoun. He's a guy who transferred in from Michigan as well too. And sometimes it takes time to pick up this defense. So he'll probably be a guy we see more next fall, I would expect. But it shows you have a 4-star corner who's transferred over from the national championship team. And no, he didn't play at Michigan, of course, but he isn't one of the first few guys we've talked about in general for this, and even amongst the backups, shows you how strong the cornerback room is for Utah. And that's only half the secondary. We still have to talk about the safeties, and there are 4 safeties in particular that I'm really fired up that Utah has on the back end. Want to break down their special skill sets in one moment. But first, we have to talk with you about our friends at Ibata. It's summertime, which means it's barbecue season. You can stock up on all your grilling favorites and earn cash back on every purchase when you use Ibata. So you won't have to choose between burgers or hot dogs. You can get both of them. The average Ibata user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or that fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibata, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank, PayPal, or gift cards. Simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and voila, the money is yours. It's time to join the over 50 million users who use Ibata to earn cash back every time they shop on over 2,400 brands at over 1,000 retailers too. Right now, Ibata is offering listeners $5 just for trying Ibata by using the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibata app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCollege. Again, all caps, no spaces. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play Store or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCollege to start earning more with Ibata. All right, now, Michelle, moving on to the safeties. This is a group that is absolutely electric. And, we mentioned earlier position change for Zemaiah Vaughn. Tao Johnson came into Utah as a wide receiver. We thought that's where he was going to be. He started his freshman year there. And after that, then they moved him to the secondary, and it's a move that worked out great. Played some nickel last year, even a little bit at safety, but has moved to safety full-time. Coaches have been raving about him, and this feels like he could very well be the next great Utah defensive backs. He made 12 starts in his first year playing defensive back. Like I said, mostly played at nickel, had 33 tackles. He was second on the team with 5 pass breakups, and he did not get the snaps as many as a lot of those other guys did too. So I was impressed by that. And he still had a large amount of snaps, but still wasn't one of the starters you saw out there all the time. And he had 7 third down stops too. So this is a guy that I think if you're going to say who's going to be the star of the defensive backfield, as good as, and I think Zemaiah Vaughn has a chance to be as well too, but like Tao Johnson, I could very well say, I think Tao has a chance to even be maybe if it all clicks together with how the coaches talk about him, and Lander Barton could be this too. I think there's a chance he could be the first Utah player drafted just based on the comments we've heard from the coaches.
Yeah, the coaching staff is really high on Tao and this move that he's made to safety. When you start hearing names like Marcus Williams and Robert Johnson and Julian Blackman kind of thrown around.
Yeah.
And those are all guys that were amazing free safeties for Utah. And it's likely that we're going to see Tao mostly at free safety. It feels like that's just kind of where they see him and where he's been practicing the most and has really picked up some steam. I think that's exciting. And I mean, he looks every bit kind of, along the same lines as those guys. So it's not hard to imagine. And yeah, coming in, I think with that knowledge of how an offense works, what a wide receiver is trying to do, I think is helpful, when you're trying to stop those plays. So that's something that I think he brings to the table, and I'm excited to see what he can do. And obviously we hinted at it in the last segment, again, with him having played nickel and he played some outside corner as well. You can move him around and stick him in a couple of different places and use a different combination of guys. And I think, that is just something that potentially could make this defense really, really hard for offenses to deal with, is the versatility of the guys that they're playing.
Yep, absolutely agree. And I'm excited to see Tao have a monster year. And yeah, he's the free safety. Who's going to be the strong safety? Well, there's some nice candidates as well around him. Just in the rest of the safety room, there are 4 guys I expect to really contribute. Tao's number 1. You got Nate Ritchie, who was really good in 2020, then went on to serve his mission the next year and returned last year. It took him some time to get his feel back, get his footing there. But like once we reached the Las Vegas game, he looked exceptional. Yeah. And so did Jonathan Hall, who we played in that game with, who had 5 tackles and a sack in the game. 19 stops for him total on the year. I love the way that those 2 players complement each other. I thought they played great together. And Alakai Gilman's a guy who just transferred him from Stanford, started all 9 games, and he appeared in last year, 50 tackles, 3 pass breakups, and 1 INT, played in 32 games over 3 years for the Cardinal. Like, Utah has legitimately 4 high-level potential starting safeties, in my opinion, on this roster. And there's only 2 spots, of course, but I feel great about whatever combination they roll out there. I had to guess right now, I'll go Johnson and Nate Ritchie, but I could see them rolling with a number of combinations, and I feel good about all of them.
Yeah. I mean, end of the day, I suspect that we'll see all of them quite a bit. Mm-hmm. Even if they're not necessarily named the starter. That's also something else that Utah loves to do. They love to rotate out their defensive guys to keep them fresh. And we talk about that a lot more, I feel like, with the defensive line, but they'll do it with the linebackers. They'll do it with their DBs. It's something that they're kind of known for, something that they typically try to do. And it just feels like this year they have a lot of options to be able to keep guys fresh and still maintain a certain level of play.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what this group can do. I think it's an exceptional group and very well at the end of the year, even though there's some questions because we haven't seen them as much, some of these guys. I feel like at the end of the year, this could end up being one of the strengths of the team. So it's incredibly a great defensive backfield. And obviously, Michelle, with you got Morgan Scalley and Sharif Shaw leading the charge, you feel good about whatever defensive backs are out there for Utah.
Yeah. It's hard not to trust those guys at this point in time. They know what they're doing. They put so many guys in the league at this point in time and or have just given guys that kind of weren't on anybody's radar at least a shot at it, a cup of tea in the NFL. Maybe they didn't stick, but, teams are willing to take a flyer on those guys. And it's because they're so well coached and because I think they're just really good at identifying under the radar talent.
They really are. And it's going to be exciting to see what they can do with this group this fall. So that does it for our defensive back talk. But Michelle, before we get out of here, with every guest who's come on this week, I've had them give a bold or a big prediction about the 2024 Utah football season. And I want to hear what yours is.
Okay. I will do 2. I will do one for one for the defense. One, this is the defensive one. The pick 6 streak continues. I believe it's year 21 if they get one.
Yeah,
I think it's 21 years straight if they get one. I think someone handles their business and takes care of that for them. I'm not entirely sure who it's going to be, but I think there's several guys that could pull that off. And then offensively, I am going to say that Cam Rising breaks Scott Mitchell's 35-year-old, all-time passing record? Is it all-time passing or career passing?
I think he's on past. If he has a big year, I know he's on track to pass him career wise.
Okay. Yeah. We're going, it's 35 years old. It's time for it to be broken,
Absolutely. And if that happens, that means Utah's had a fantastic season too. And that's what we all hope and expect. So we'd love to see Cam do that. And once again, just so fired up that we were basically a week and a day away from Utah football being back. Michelle, if everyone wants to keep up with your work, where should they head over to?
So for now, you can check me out at utezone.com. It's part of the 247 Sports Network. And then, of course, you can follow me online as well on X, on Threads, and on Instagram. It's at Bodkin is a boss.
Thank you so much again for joining me, Michelle. Great stuff.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Utes. We've previewed just about every position, except for we still got to talk about the offensive line and linebackers, as well as we'll be reacting to all the latest relating to Utah football. Stick with us on Locked On Utes. We'll be back tomorrow.